During the 1980s, Steve Guttenberg was a massive Hollywood titan, ruling the box office with hits like Police Academy, Three Men and a Baby, and Short Circuit. He was the ultimate nice guy, with a $1 million smile, headlining the biggest comedies and raking in massive paychecks for every role. Then the 90s hit, and Steve Guttenberg just vanished. He went from Hollywood's golden boy to a total ghost overnight. Without any messy scandals or spectacular flops, he just sort of evaporated. So, what really happened to Steve Guttenberg? Was it his call, or did the industry just move on? Let's dive into how one of the 80s biggest icons got sidelined. Born on August 24th, 1958, in Brooklyn, New York, Stephen Robert Guttenberg grew up in a middle-class Jewish household in Massapequa. His mother was a surgical assistant, and his father was an army ranger, creating a disciplined environment miles away from his future stardom. Steve caught the acting bug early. At 17, he headed to Manhattan to chase his dreams, balancing shifts as a waiter with endless auditions. He spent years grinding in minor theater and television roles, honing his craft without catching that one big break. He landed a decent gig in 1980 with the Chicken Chronicles, but then came Can't Stop the Music, a disco flick that totally bombed with critics and fans alike. Guttenberg kept pushing anyway, eventually landing a part in Barry Levinson's Diner, a film that finally earned him some serious critical respect. Everything shifted in 1984 when Hugh Wilson cast a bunch of misfits for a zany comedy called Police Academy. The director needed a lead who could anchor the madness, someone likable and grounded, yet heroic in an everyday way. After his audition, Wilson hired him on the spot to play Carey Mahoney, the prankster dodging jail by joining the force. Police Academy dropped in March 1984 and became a massive sensation. Shot on a shoestring budget of $4.5 million, the film pulled in a staggering $149 million worldwide. It was the year's sleeper hit, sparking a 7-movie franchise. Just like that, Guttenberg became a household name. His take on Mahoney was perfect, rebellious, and charming with a heart of gold. People everywhere instantly fell for his witty but brave persona. He returned for the sequels in 1985 and 86. Even as critics started trashing the movies, the box office numbers stayed sky high. By then, he was the face of 80s family humor. Still, Steve was desperate to avoid being pigeonholed as just the Police Academy guy. That same year, he starred in Cocoon, a sci-fi drama directed by Ron Howard. It followed a group of retirees who stumble upon a pool with alien-powered healing properties. Playing boat captain Jack Bonner allowed him to show off his dramatic range alongside industry legends. Cocoon crushed it, raking in over $85 million. The movie even snagged 2 Oscars, including a Best Supporting Actor win for Donna Meche. He proved he was more than just a goofball. Working with Howard and that elite cast gave him some serious acting street cred. Next came Short Circuit, a sci-fi comedy about a military robot that gains a soul after a lightning strike. Steve played the lead engineer, Newton Crosby. It was another smash, earning over $40 million in the States. The movie became an 80s cult classic, proving Steve could carry a hit outside his main franchise. 1987 saw him join forces with Tom Selleck and Ted Danson for Three Men and a Baby, making him a box office king. The plot centered on 3 bachelors whose playboy lifestyles get flipped upside down when an infant shows up on their doorstep. In Three Men and a Baby, he played a bachelor architect, forced to grow up fast. The film became a total cultural explosion. It pulled in over $167 million domestically, making it 1987's top earner. It even outpaced blockbusters like Predator and Beverly Hills Cop 2. Steve was sitting on top of the world, backed by incredible chemistry with his co-stars Selleck and Danson. The trio had amazing chemistry as they fumbled through fatherhood. It really tapped into that late 80s vibe regarding men and parenting. By 1987, he was an absolute juggernaut, juggling 3 hit franchises and dominating the silver screen. Every studio wanted a piece of him, and he could name his price. However, he was getting boxed into a very narrow category of roles. He kept getting stuck in light-hearted family comedies, always playing the goofy nice guy who finds his way by the 3rd act. 1988 saw high spirits in the Cocoon sequel, but the scripts were starting to feel like they were written on autopilot. His 1989 romantic comedy, Don't Tell Her It's Me, barely made a ripple at the theaters. 1990 brought the sequel, Three Men and a Little Lady, which netted $71 million. But the scripts were getting stale, and Tinseltown was starting to change. The sugary family films of the previous decade were being shoved aside for an edgier, more cynical, and darker brand of comedy. Hits like Home Alone introduced a fresh style of family comedy. Meanwhile, guys like Jim Carrey were bringing a much wilder, high-energy brand of humor to the screen. Guttenberg's clean-cut image and safe jokes suddenly felt out of style. Audiences wanted something edgier, and the phone just stopped ringing. He appeared in the soccer flick The Big Green and the Olsen twins movie It Takes Two, but the momentum was gone. His roles shrank, moving from theaters to the bargain bin. The hardest part was realizing the industry had simply left him behind. It wasn't some grand conspiracy or rejection. He just stopped being part of the conversation, and the scripts eventually dried up. By the mid-90s, he'd plummeted from A-list status to starring in movies that went straight to home video. He popped up in minor TV spots and forgettable projects like Home Team or P.S. Your Cat is Dead. These were just echoes of his former fame. For nearly 2 decades, he was basically off the map. While fans thought he'd retired, the truth was he just couldn't land a job. Later on, Steve would get incredibly real about how painful that downward spiral actually was. "I plummeted from being the industry's biggest draw to not even getting a call back," he confessed. Tinseltown has a notoriously short memory. Fade from view for a second, and you're history. He also owned up to his own missteps. He turned down projects that might have totally pivoted his career path. He was overly picky when he held all the cards, but by the time he wanted back in, the phone had stopped ringing. Throughout the early 2000s, he survived on voiceovers and indie cameos. Then, in 2008, a small window of opportunity finally opened up. He joined the cast of ABC's Dancing with the Stars. He didn't last long, but it reintroduced him to the public and proved he didn't take himself too seriously. The real shift in how people saw him kicked off around 2012, fueled by a massive wave of 80s nostalgia sweeping the internet. Suddenly, millennials and Gen Xers were revisiting the hits of their youth. Police Academy turned into a goldmine for memes, and Three Men and a Baby was rebranded as a total classic. Fans started wondering where Steve Guttenberg went. Articles titled "Whatever Happened to Steve Guttenberg" began circulating. People were genuinely fascinated by the meteoric rise and total disappearance of such a massive icon. Steve embraced the spotlight via podcasts and conventions, speaking with a refreshing lack of resentment about his career's arc. He simply noted, "I had my run, the business evolved, and I just didn't keep pace." By 2017, he scored a recurring gig on HBO's Ballers alongside Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It was a modest part, but being on a prestige show proved he still had that screen presence and acting chops. Now 65, Steve is completely at peace with his legacy. He isn't the box office king he was in 1987, and he's fine with that. He picks and chooses projects that actually interest him, living a low-key life while embracing his unique chapter in cinema history. He found personal bliss with journalist Emily Smith in 2019. Between charity work and 80s fan events, he only steps back in front of the camera when the right script lands. Guttenberg's trajectory serves as a fascinating case study on the fickle nature of Hollywood fame. His story highlights how being pigeonholed can sabotage a long-term career. Steve was so linked to those light-hearted 80s comedies that when the genre faded, his prospects vanished too. It also highlights the terrifying speed at which the industry can cast aside even its biggest legends. In 1987, he was the king of the box office. 5 years later, he was unemployed. It's a harsh lesson on how fickle fame is, but his journey is also about finding peace. Steve could have spent decades wallowing in resentment. Instead, he chose to lead with honesty and a grateful heart. "I had one hell of a ride," he said. "I headlined films that people still cherish today. Not many actors get to say that." To the kids who grew up on his hits, Guttenberg is the ultimate 80s icon, totally likable and wholesome. His films weren't high art, but they were pure joy, and that counts for something. Now, a whole new generation is discovering his work on streaming platforms. Police Academy remains a cult favorite, and Three Men and a Baby is still ranked among the most successful comedies ever made. So, that's the saga of Steve Guttenberg, from an absolute 80s powerhouse to a forgotten actor who eventually found contentment. It's a sobering look at how fast the industry can build you up and move on. What are your thoughts on Steve? Do you have favorite memories of his 80s run? Does he deserve a massive Hollywood comeback? Drop your take in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like and subscribe for more industry stories. See you next time.